Hey guys, how's it going? It's just Terrell, your resident sensitive guy here. Just got out of the shower. As you can tell, I'm drying my hair. That's just the beauty of having long hair. So, just gonna talk a little bit about what happened yesterday. At I believe 4:15, if I'm doing my time measurements correctly, Central Daylight Time. Um, Derek Chauvin, former Minneapolis police officer, charged was convicted, sorry, not charged, convicted, charging is before the conviction, was convicted of second degree murder, third degree murder, and second degree manslaughter, and of the death of George Floyd. This is, I think, in my lifetime, the very first time I've ever seen, like, a police officer actually be held accountable for the messed up stuff he did, or she. And I mean, there may be a different case. There may be, I don't know, like I'm 25, so if you find something, say, oh, well, what about this case? Okay, well, it can't be from like 1982. Like I was born in 95, so it got to be something like at least 96 and up. But yeah, this is like the very first time I've actually seen like a case like this, and I think I'm looking at this from different standpoints. Looking at this from obviously like a psychological standpoint. I'm looking at this from like a objective point of view, and I'm looking at this from like where do we go from here? So my piece on it is I'm obviously ecstatic. I mean, I don't look it because just woke up, but I'm obviously ecstatic because this is the very first time, like I said, I've actually seen a police officer be held accountable for their actions. I think if I'm being real with you, the video helped. So my friend actually posted on one of my posts on Facebook, and he said, "Sorry, I have like eyelash in my eye, and I'm not editing the video." There it is. And I think what my friend said was, if it wasn't videotaped, we probably wouldn't be like, it probably would have went the other way, and that's true. The evidence was basically the proof was in the pudding. Like it was videotaped, everyone saw it, everyone watched that videotape, even the juror who didn't watch the videotape, he saw it like millions of times watching it just there. And I think that's important to know is like, we got to make sure that we as stuff like this happens, like we're filming, you know, them do it because we have the proof there. Um I think another thing I definitely looked at is like if I would be nitpicky, I would argue that the charge should have been first degree, but I know that's a hard charge to stick in the judicial system that we have set up because DAs and cops are supposed to work with each other. I get that. Having that as a charge to stick would have been just extremely difficult. So that's just a nitpick, though. That's also a nitpick saying that like the other three police officers should have been charged too. That's also a nitpick, and I understand like from real, I understand that like yeah, they 100% should have been charged. They are responsible too, but I understand like you can't have it all. Like you gotta have to just pick your battles on this one. And Derek Chauvin was the one with his knee on George Floyd's neck, so I mean, he's the one who had to go. Um, but again, those are just nitpicks, and that's just me being picky about the situation. But overall, I think the reception was welcome well, except a couple people on the Facebook and Twittergram, and I just I think one of the things I would like to talk about is how weirdly polarizing it is to talk about issues like this. So back in 2016, obviously, as majority of y'all know, Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem, and it was to protest, police brutality. And originally he sat down, but then his friend, who was a Green Beret, was like, "Hey, I would appreciate it. I agree with everything you're saying. I appreciate if you did this for him, took a knee, and somehow it made it worse." I don't understand how it made it worse. That's the thing that kind of like optically would it be worse? Like optically, like they were complaining about him. They didn't see him sit down first, which I guess technically speaking would have been worse. But I don't understand how taking a knee during the national anthem was worse than sitting. I don't know. That's one thing I still don't get. Anywho, where was I going with this? Colin Kaepernick took a knee, national anthem. But yeah, I seen a lot of like polarizing things about, the BLM movement and Black Lives Matter, because when you see a lot of the protests that turned violent, well, the police provoked it to go violent, but that's a different story for a different time. A lot of people basically see like, oh, see, like, look, blah blah blah, these people are out there doing this, these people out there doing that, like they're looting that target. But a couple things I have to say about one, majority of protests that happened under, like the March for George Floyd last year were peaceful. They started off peaceful into provoked by police. I literally watched videos in New York. They were running over people with their squad cars. In LA, they were beating people with batons. And those are fairly liberal cities, by the way. And they were like in Buffalo, they literally pushed an old man down to the ground and they just watched him just stay there. And I know some of y'all gonna, if you're watching this, you're gonna point, well, what about Miami? Like, well, where I live, I live in South Florida. What about Miami, where like the cops are taking, like knees with it? And the best way I honestly can gauge that argument is that I watch a lot of Trevor Noah because I love the way he like puts things. He puts it so elegantly. And the best way I honestly can put it to you is like from the way he put it to me, is just from watching like his video, is that yeah, you're gonna have good fruit bear from a rotten tree. It's not a bunch of bad apples that a lot of people say is like, oh, it's just a few bad apples, don't worry about it, or just a few bad apples, don't let all the bad apples, ruin it for you. No, it's a rotten tree. It's a rotten system. Literally, the system of policing in America started from slavery. They were the slave patrols. They would go around, they would catch runaway enslaved people, my ancestors, and bring them back to the plantation. That's the system of policing that we had. Other than that, we didn't really have much of a system of police. We had like a sheriff, and he can basically make a posse, but we didn't really have policing. That's what we had. We basically had a slave patrol to catch runaway enslaved people. That's where policing actually came from in America. That's where the idea came from. So the system has always been rigged against black people. I think it's the best way of putting that. The system has always been, a system, like just of oppression. And I think what we saw in this case, the case of Derrick Chauvin, was the system broke itself. Like the same people who typically would defend the cop came out to testify against the police officer. And the same people in the same system that has gotten multiple police officers off for basically murder put one away. The system literally broke itself. And that to me is a good thing. It's a drop. And before I get, so strung up about it, it's a drop in the bucket. Like, I'm gonna just be real. Like, there's a lot more work that still needs to be done, but it's a necessary drop in the bucket. It's like whenever you're digging a well and you're trying to get that water out of the well, and you're just like, you've just been going so at it. So once you see that one drop, like it may be the murkiest, dirtiest little drop of water, but it's something, and that means that's a good sign. That means you're going to be able to get water if you just keep working at it, keep working at it. So as I'm watching the trial unfold, I'm like I said, I'm seeing the system basically break itself, and it's in a way kind of a support of the idea of defunding the police, because me, full disclosure, I grew up in South Jersey, in my hometown where I was born. I moved around a lot, but where I was born, my hometown, Camden, New Jersey, we actually disbanded our, police department in 2013, 2014. Yeah. And they restarted the police department. And for anyone who doesn't know anything about South Jersey, Camden is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. But the violent crime rate has gone down drastically after they defunded their police department and restarted from scratch. Like they have more community initiatives. Like police officers don't, like, even in the snow, the sleets, the rain, they're out there walking two by two, talking to people in the community. That's completely different than when you see, like, I live down here in South Florida, like I said. I see a Miami-Dade police officer. I live in Broward County, like northwest Broward County. I see a Miami-Dade police officer who doesn't even live in like the county live out here. Like I see police officers from like I don't know like all the way like when I lived in Miami-Dade, I saw a police officer from like West Palm Beach who lived in like North Miami Beach, and it's like you're driving all the way from West Palm Beach to North Miami Beach. Why do you care? Why would you care about anything that happens in West Palm Beach? And that's kind of the thing. And Camden's not like that. They have incentives for police officers to be from the community and to live in Camden County, at least the county. I mean, you definitely probably get more of an incentive if you lived in the city of Camden, but at least in Camden County, because then it becomes your problem. Like, hey, this is my town. This is my problem. I want to make sure that I look after my town. And I know in Louisville, after the killing of Breonna Taylor, that's another nitpick I can say. Well, they got the killers for George Floyd. They got the killer for George Floyd. What about the killers for Breonna Taylor? It's another nitpick I could say. And to be honest with you, I mean, that's a right nitpick to say. But at the same time, I understand, you can't have it all. Um, but whenever like you have police officers from the community and people that actually want to invest in the community, things do end up being different. Um, I think going forward as a young black man, first thing I'd just like to say the amount of support from the white community, people my age, like in their 20s and 30s, has been absolutely overwhelmingly amazing. I love y'all like chicken. I don't eat meats, but I love y'all like cake. I do eat cake. I love y'all like cake. Or I guess I love y'all like beer. I mean, I work in a brewery, so I love y'all like beer. Um, it's been overwhelmingly amazing. But the problem is, though, is like my cynicalness is going to, kick in and be like, how are we so sure that this is going to be still the norm? Like, the trial's over. We won. But it's a drop in the bucket. It's a small victory. It's big but small at the same time. It's big because we've never seen something like this actually happen, where the system broke itself to actually, do right and justice. But at the same time, how much of it is, just okay, well, we got justice for George Floyd, we're done. No, we got to keep going. The best way I can honestly say is that, and this is going to be a cliche, but this is not a sprint. Like, this isn't like, all right, like we ran the 100, we're there. No, this is like a marathon, and we just reached mile one. We have like 25 more miles to go. Like, we really do. We have a long time to go before we even get there. So, I guess if I can give any piece of advice for my newly found friends of the Caucasian type that are woke AF now, if I can give three things of solid advice. Number one is to listen first. Being a person who grew up, obviously a person of color, I'm black. Being a person who grew up in this systemic oppression, whether it be the systemic oppression of policing, redlining where we live, a bunch of different things. I know firsthand what it's like to be in the mud. I know firsthand what it's like to basically be, oppressed. I know what it's like to basically be treated like a second class, maybe third class citizen by, you know, police officers and other people of the community. I remember the cops getting called was always been a threat to me when I moved to Pittsburgh. It's a little bit different when I lived in New Jersey because I didn't grow up in predominantly white. I didn't grow up in like lower income white neighborhoods when I lived like well, I wouldn't say lower income white, like lower income mixed white black neighborhoods. When I lived in Pittsburgh, I grew up in predominantly Latino neighborhoods in New Jersey, so it's a little bit different. But I remember, being, having the police getting called on you was a threat. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, because we've always been seen, like, me and my friends would be hanging out, we've always been seen as like second class citizens. We've been seen lower than what we really are. Um, Knowing that, life experience, it's important to listen to us. And I've basically been on Facebook, which is the best of the toxic waste dumps of the internet. I don't care, I'll say it. If I get demonetized or whatever, I don't really care. I'll say it. Um, basically being on Facebook, I see a lot of people, saying, all right, well, this is what we want next, this is what we want next, this is what we want next. Now, look, I agree with all that, but you got to slow your roll now. Getting an all three guilty conviction for Derek Chauvin, hopefully I'm saying his name right, was basically an act of God. I think is the best way of putting that. It was not the easiest thing in the world. The system breaking itself like that was an act of God. They literally, that's moving heaven and earth to do that. I don't understand how. I don't understand. I mean, I don't think you understand the magnetism of how monumental that really is. That's why it's a big victory, but it's a small victory at the same time. The second thing I would say is to practice patience, because the same system that got us into this mess, the same system that got us out of it. And what I mean by that is that when we say 400 years of slavery, and like Kanye West will disagree, when we say 400 years of slavery, basically what we mean is that it was slavery, and then it was after slavery, and we're still living in after slavery. We never really moved past after slavery. We just basically redefine what slavery is. I mean, mandatory minimums have helped that. The private prison industry has helped that. Like I said already, redlining has helped that. Basically, if you go into black communities, there's banking deserts, food deserts, lack of public transportation. I can keep going on and on. It's all been systemic, though. It's not just one thing. It's multiple things that's been basically placed upon us. So the same way that this has happened is the same way that we basically got to get out of it. We got to dismantle the establishment board by board. Yes, that's a SpongeBob reference, but that's what we got to do. We literally got to like start ripping apart, like piece by piece, because the minute we start to basically take overhaul it, it's going to fight back against us. You basically could see it on like Fox News, on like Newsmax, or like like anywhere on social media that basically has like a far right ideology. It's going to fight back against you. There are people that still going to wear like their thin blue line shirts, say I back the blue. There's people that's going to basically even look at this and be like, no, like I'm happy that this happened, and then look at the next shooting that already happened in Brooklyn Center. I believe it's Brooklyn Center. That's the name of the town. Or the one that happened in Columbus, literally the day of the trial. And people are going to be like, oh, okay, well, that one's completely different. No, it's all the same. All the killings are the same. They all follow the same pattern. But you're going to see this. You're going to see basically the system rebel. Fight back against you, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep people. It's designed to keep people oppressed, and it's designed to keep people, profiting and benefiting off that oppression, whether it be, the clout of it, whether it be economically, whether it be like, social status wise. Like it's designed that way for a reason. So patience is definitely key. It's going to be a marathon, so don't drop out now. Yeah, we got through mile one, but we got 25 more miles to go. And I think the last thing I could say is persistence. Is to be persistent. This one is going to be a lot harder. It's going to be basically us banging on the door into this hole in it. This one is going to probably be the most hard part about it, is being persistent. It's going to basically being, like, yeah, let's go back out there, and let's go back out there and like protest rights. Let's go back out there and like push for lawmakers that are going to be very you know, progressive about these reforms. And to our credit, we've been doing a fairly decent job at it. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, of all my qualms and, like disagreements with President Joe Biden, you know, he literally stopped. He had a speech plan to address the nation about our infrastructure and about getting us back on the right track because of the pandemic. He stopped that speech because he knew the gravity of the situation. He's like, no, no, no. This is way more important. This is way more important than what I have to say. This is way more important than what I have to do for the country. This is the most important thing that we can basically, take hold of. And to be honest with you, that's a lot different than what we had to deal with for the 4 years prior to that with 45, where, you didn't really care. What he had to say was more important. So I feel it's gonna be a long time coming. It's gonna be a long time coming, but change will come. And again, that's another cliche, but change will come. I don't think it's gonna happen directly in our lifetime. And I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket with Joe Biden. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm not. But it's also small steps. It's also dismantling this. It's also dismantling the system that's already there. Once we finally get there, which will probably end up being in our 70s. So, I mean, if you're in your 20s and 30s now and you think you're old, it's going to get worse. My back already is starting to hurting, and I'm only 25. It is going to get worse. But it's important for us to be persistent on getting those people in there and understanding that, hey, look, we need people that understand what's going on. And to our credit, we've been doing very well about that. But it's also the system's going to rebel back against us. There's going to be people that are for the system. There's going to be people that still benefit from the system. And I think the most annoying thing I hear is that when of course, like when you're benefiting, if you're of Caucasian descent and you're benefiting from the system, that's white privilege. And people say, well, I never got like a special card. I never got, like a discount on like Disney World or anything like that. Like, no, white privilege is basically being able to look at this Derrick Chauvin case and basically be like, oh, cool, and not understand the gravity of the situation. White privilege is basically being able to go on Twitter, such as certain book writers and cable news pundits, and basically say, oh, well, I guess the looting will stop now since they actually ruled in that favor. White privilege is basically being able to say, oh, well, they got this one, that was wrong, but all the other ones are different. No, that's white privilege. You're benefiting from the system because you're not the one that basically has fear for your life. You're not the one who gets harassed every single day. You're not the one getting called the N-word by a police officer. And you're the one who can call the police officer if you feel unsafe or you think you feel unsafe just because the people that are around you are black. That's white privilege. And to the credit of my friends who understand that are white, thank you. But if watching this Derrick Chauvin case has not opened up anything in your eyes, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know what will, but we got a long road ahead of us. We gonna get there, but it's gonna take some time, and we all gotta stick together while we do it. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be miserable, and it's gonna be long, and there's gonna be times where you're just gonna feel like you want to give up, but you can't give up. We need to keep going. Stay blessed.